levels that you're never gonna get. Always push it up until the red. Never expect your respect. I train 52 weeks times 10.
The Dark Knight Returns, in my opinion, is one of the greatest graphic novels ever released. It massively changed perceptions on Batman at the time, and it set in stone many of the values that we hold true today. So it's a good thing that Frank Miller decided to do this prequel and completely fuck it up. It was once a time when I viewed Frank Miller as a god. Then something happened. At some point in the year 1999, he was kidnapped, killed, cloned, and replaced with a being that I call Bizarro Frank. Bizarro Frank is the George Lucas of comics, the most evil being on the planet who uses words like retard and goddamn every goddamn retarded second. Since then, Bizarro Frank has moved heaven and earth to tarnish the legacy of his original vision. We've seen The Dark Knight Strikes Again, terrible. We've seen Holy Terror, fucking terrible. And now Bizarro Frank is set to ravage his classic, The Dark Knight Returns, with this piece of shit. Illustrated by John Romita Jr., it tells the tale of the fateful night that Jason Todd was murdered. But is it actually any good? Ha! Like you need me to answer that. But I will! So let's dive into The Dark Knight Returns, The Last Crusade. My first question is, what's the fucking point? When reviewing this, I just thought, why does this exist? For 30 years, we've known what happened to Jason Todd when he died. In a seminal story, Death in the Family, we saw the Joker murder the Boy Wonder. It's still heralded highly on several top 10 lists. It just seems like a pointless thing to write a prequel book about. It's more pointless than a broken pencil. Because of the... Never mind. It's more pointless than a Bible at an ISIS training camp. Upon initially reading The Dark Knight Returns, I never really needed the backstory as to how Jason died. No matter what a writer thought up, it could never match the sick and sadistic torture I dreamt up for the Boy Wonder, so I never understood why Bizarro Frank needed to cover it. I guess it's because he's goddamn Frank goddamn Miller. He felt the need to delve into the backstory, but from the off it feels like a huge waste of time. It's been 30 years and there's so much to cover in the Dark Knight universe. I'm really just baffled as why he picked this when we've seen it done 1,000 times before. This is a bigger waste of time than having a shit after you've just had a shower. Opening on a full page of blue and red lines, it really seems like lazy Frank Miller is back in full effect. After just reading Holy Terror and seeing how Frank uses pages of boxes to kill time, I began getting flashbacks. He seems to have transferred his consciousness into the body of John Romita Jr. and forced him to act out his will, so he doesn't really have to describe what characters are doing on one page. Wow, Frank. It makes it really difficult to tell what's going on, especially for the opening. It makes you question which characters are talking, why you should care. You know, the normal problems that you face when trying to read a George Lucas, Frank Miller story. The Joker babbles some stuff about how science is quackery and how the maestros have been fooled before getting thrown back into Arkham. I have absolutely no idea what this means, and it just seems pretentious for pretentiousness' sake. However, Gotham breathes a collective sigh of relief knowing that the Clown Prince of Crime is locked up once more. News, 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 news. A motif of The Dark Knight Returns was its satirical use of news anchors to provide exposition. They rear their head here again, but show no real insight or thought beyond a plastic cartoon character. One remarks that Robin might be too young to be put in these dangerous situations, but it's just quickly dropped. One of the anchors goes,
"What do you mean by that?"
And he just goes,
"I don't know what I mean by that."
Like, don't bring up the point if you're not going to deliver on it. That kind of thematically carries on through the book. This is a book in which Jason Todd gets murdered, and rather than set up several warnings to Batman that he's acting hugely irresponsible, Bizarro Frank drops the main intrigue of the book almost as soon as he can bring it up. I wanted to see people question Batman. It would make him question himself. We know that not long after Jason's murder that he hung up the cowl, but why? No one seems to be angry that he's putting a child in danger, and the book seems wholly underdeveloped because of it. It's not all bad. One of the aspects that I love is that Batman just has a whole beaten sense to him. He seems like a broken man. He, like everyone in the world, has to deal with the fact that he's not getting any younger. Struggles to get up in the morning, and it shows a real vulnerable side to him. He's often painted out in other comics as his unbeatable vigilante, but here he just seems like he's crap. I don't think he wins a fight through the entire book. And it really invests you in the character and paints out the frailty of ambition and life itself. They're all going to die, there's nothing we can do about it, and there's nothing after it. It's really uplifting. The depth is quickly ruined when we travel back to Arkham. The Joker once again tells a story, this time about a boy born with a broken neck whose perspective of the world was different because he never had a straight view of things. It's intriguing. It feels like it's setting up to deliver a huge punchline, but it doesn't. It ends with the Joker walking off mid-sentence. There's a huge build-up of tension but no release. Imagine having a character named the Joker and he never tells a joke. Instead he tells the setup, but it's so unfunny that he can't think of any punchline. You'd have to feel like a pretty big idiot of a writer if you did that, whoever you are. I know it's you, Frank. The main plot of the book revolves around Batman taking down Poison Ivy, which seems weird to like jam this in a Jason Todd death story. The rich men of Gotham flock to her, wanting to do a bidding whatever the cost. Proper BDSM stuff, especially because Batman looks like he's wearing a gimp mask. But I digress. Normally I would criticise the use of Ivy. She's a very supernatural character, and the world that was depicted in The Dark Knight Returns is very grounded, except for Superman. The Plant Lady doesn't really belong in this universe, but here she does kind of showcase Batman's impotence, both physically and mentally. He's faced with a beautiful woman and is unable to properly perform, and that's kind of a metaphor for just how beaten he actually is. It's nice to know that even metaphorically, Bizarro Frank still has his roots in prostitution. Robin takes Ivy down, Batman barely makes it through the fight, and during this the Joker escapes Arkham, building towards the conclusion. Unfortunately, the climax is really depressing and dull. Robin takes off into the night looking for the Joker. Bruce is unable to follow just because he's had the crap kicked out of him. He's like a woman in her 50s, 8 kids, like throwing one of them mini sausages that you get at Christmas down a train tunnel. Not underground either, outside. You know, proper beat. That big, that beat. But I digress. Jason foolishly goes to take down the Clown Prince of Crime in his ambush beating, and then the story ends. That's it. It's over. Just as things were getting good. I know that this was originally supposed to be a 2-parter, but there's no follow-up. No, there's no follow-up coming because I know how lazy Frank Miller is. The sequel book has about as much chance of coming out as Tom Cruise does. So I can only judge this book on its own merits and not what could be coming down the line. And honestly, it's pretty crappy. The joke that the Joker failed to tell earlier on in the book, this book fails to deliver on its main selling point, which is Jason Todd's murder. It really feels like it doesn't deliver the punchline. It's all set up to nothing. I wanted something that would rival Death in the Family. All I got was a death of my appreciation for The Dark Knight Returns. It adds nothing to the source material, and I wish Bizarro Frank would just leave this property alone. So overall, this is a really disappointing story. The artwork is great and services it very well, but I can't really recommend a story that doesn't have a proper ending, just a beginning, a middle, and then there, even as much as I like the original book. Perhaps this trade will be worth collecting if a sequel ever does come out, but I doubt it will, so at the moment I can only give it a 5 out of 10. Yeah. So I'm going to be doing this Road to the Dark Knight 3 series where I review every book in the canon of it. Make sure you subscribe my channel because coming next is The Dark Knight Returns, and then after that I'm going to do The Dark Knight Strikes Again, and then after that The Dark Knight 3. And you can check out my full thoughts on that on my YouTube channel and my website at definition.co.uk. Thanks very much for checking out my video. Take care. Peace.